So in this episode of Smoogleville, we're going to make a little shelf unit inside here, because these corners in kitchens where the cabinets are, it's always hard to make use of this space here. And so I thought if we had a shelf at about this height here, we can get some of the smaller items that we use down on the counter up there and keep them away from the water and anything else that might get spilled here. So I'm going to use a tape measure and a metal detector, and let's take this roll out of the way. Well, the design, actually, the design idea is to have a shelf that comes from about back here, just above that power socket, out to here, and then I'm going to have a little drop down, and we're going to keep the paper roll towel on that as well. So I'll be making a little device for that also underneath the shelf. So we'll probably take this one off, because this one has a kind of a design fault whereby if you attempt to pull on this too hard, very often it will fall out of the usually when you've only got one hand, so we'll probably take that off as well. So that's that. So now, metal detector. Why am I using a metal detector? This is a great way to find these studs. Stud finders, I have mixed results with those. Sometimes they work really well, other times they just find, I don't know, if there's power lines in there, they get confused. If you don't hold it flat against the wall, it gets confused. So this has proven to be a way better idea, and so I want to find where the studs are. There should be, let's see what distance we've got. Yeah, we got 3 feet there, so there should be at least with the corner included 3 pickup points there, but I don't know exactly where they are. So I'm going to measure, I'm going to use this to find them, and I'm going to measure where the studs are so I can pre-drill the holes. Let's see if we can find a screw in the wall here. I'm going to have to get kind of flat, because I think this point here is the strongest signal point. Well, we knew we'd have one in the corner, right? So there's something going on there. There's another one there. And there we go again. It looks about right. Now there's probably another one here, but we're not coming out that far, so let's turn that off. And let's measure between those. Exactly 16 inches between those markers. And so I think that's a very successful way of knowing where the studs are. So those are centering at 7 inches and 23 and a half. 7 inches and 23 and a half inches. That's my studs, and of course we'll have one right in the corner as well, so let's make a note of that. Okay, studs. Now the shelving itself needs to be, I've got 3 feet there. Might be nice to come back just a touch, seeing as they're lower. So go to 34 inches for the shelf length. All right, and now the rest I think we can do in the workshop. All right, so let's go over to the shop now and build that shelf. So having taken some measurements, the materials we're going to be using, we have a 1 inch by 3 foot piece of red oak dowel. This is all red oak. We have this piece here, which is actually finished at 7 1/4. That'll be the top part of the shelf, and then fitted to the bottom of that to act as a bracket for the wall, we're going to have a 2.5 inch piece of red oak there as well. So I'm going to get these cut to length, these two, and then we'll get started. Next, I used some of the off-cut 2.5 inch red oak to
start building the little bracket that will hold the towel rail there. So I'm just working out where I'll drill the hole for that. And then I drilled the hole using a 1-inch Forstner bit.
Okay, let's see how tight that hole is. Yeah, that's snug. That's really nice. That's really snug. That'll hold nicely, that. All right, terrific, good. Right, next, let's put a little bit of a shape on there. So I was digging around looking for something that's the right diameter, and that's it. That's perfect. That's the lid off one of those Great Stuff tins. It's perfect. Must treat myself to a pair of compasses at some point, but that'll do for now. Let's get that on the old bandsaw. Yeah, this bandsaw, you can see there, is getting a little blunt. It's sort of polished it more than cut it now. So I definitely need to sharpen that blade or replace it. I'll probably sharpen it when I've got about 30 minutes to spare. And it's in need because that's just really not cutting nicely. Now notice also that I didn't cut right to the line there. I'm going to actually finish that on the sander. I can get a nicer finish and it won't burn like that on the disc sander. So I'm going to actually finish it on there. On this corner here, I'm going to put another curve, and I guess we should probably match the one on the end of the that towel holder there. So I'm going to this is this corner here. So again, I'll take the most of that off with the bandsaw, and then I'll use the sanding machine to do the rest. So I was trying to figure out how to make a nice diameter on the end of this piece to hold the toilet roll in. It needs to be just a little bit fatter than this just to hold the roll on. And so I found this washer that I think would do it. It's that's going to give me the diameter I need. And I'm going to simply, I don't really have a tool for this. The bandsaw's probably, I can rough it out on the bandsaw, but I can't do the accurate cut. So I've drawn around this thing. I thought of using a hole saw, but the problem with that is it'll make a hole in the middle. It's not a plug cutter. I'm also going to find the center of this, and I'm going to use that Forstner bit to countersink the 1-inch hole slightly into this. So I make a 1-inch depression in that. Then I'll cut this out and I'll actually finish the circle on the sanding. On the disc sander again. That seems to be a good way for getting a fairly precise finish, and then I'll round it off. It'd be nice to be able to route it, but I can't think of a safe way of getting a router bit on there. It'd be nice to go round over on each side, but I don't think that's going to be possible. I'll give that some thought. Okay, let's make that then. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty much in the center, so that hole I've just made with the dividers, I can use that to recess the end of this. Okay, so I just used the drill press to create this depression there using a 1-inch Forstner bit, and then I chopped it out. I cut it out of that block using the miter saw there just to chip it out. And I think I'm just going to let the sander take these corners off. It should do it fairly quickly. It's got a fairly fresh disc on it, and then I'll try and think of a way of getting some kind of a rounded edge on here as well, but we'll see. It's kind of fun trying to figure these things out, but that will sit on there nicely, and I can just glue that on. And now all I just got to do is make that round and pretty, you know. just before I do this, I'm using this. This one's called Maxi Abrasive, and it actually cleans up the disc before you use it. My friend Bob got me this, and I'm really glad he did. It's brilliant. Watch this. I think that idea is coming together. It don't have to be perfect, it just has to be pretty, right? So I've got a good circle there now, and now all I want to do is somehow edge these, and I could just do it by hand. I'd really like to figure out a way of safely putting it on a router and putting a round over on there. Let me give that some thought. So I'm going to try and spin this. I think that'll be the safer way of doing it. So I've made a small hole. The problem is don't go right through, you know. But I made a small hole using this bit here, this tapered bit, and now I've got one of these new, what is that, T10 very narrow screws. I'm just going to put it in by hand so I don't push it out the back. Just get it so it's tight enough to get a grip on it. And then my cunning plan is to load it up in this drill here and spin it like a top. Basically, it's not very square, unfortunately, but it might allow me to run some abrasives on there and round it over a bit. Yeah, I think that'll work. All right, let's unscrew that. And then, yeah, that's all right. It'll keep that'll keep the roll on, won't it? I'll just get that gluing up, and that's a fairly contemporary looking roll holder, isn't it? You know. Okay, so I've put my end cap on here, but I was trying to think of a way to put this into the hole on the back bracket here without the glue getting on the inside of this join, because I do want to stain it, and that will be very hard to sand out and more or less impossible. So this was easy. I just put glue on that and pushed it on. But when it gets to this back end, I've pushed it through about an inch, and now I'm going to put a thin spread of Elmer's on there and just turn it in the hole. It's fairly snug, so it shouldn't take too much glue. And then I'm going to slowly pull that back through, and that's going to ooze out of the back there. You can see it coming out, and I'm going to bring this up so that this is flush. I'm going to try and line up the grain a little bit, but I'm going to try and bring it up so that it is flush or just slightly proud. The idea is I can easily sandpaper this surface, but I couldn't sand the glue off if it got on this inside surface here. So there you go. Let's see how that works out. And I'll use a damp cloth and some water to clean that up with. So let's do that, and that won't activate the glue. It's not one of those types of glue, it's water activated, but what it will do is make sure that I haven't got any excess glue, so I won't have to do too much sanding. So that cleans that up, so that's good. So we'll let that dry while I get on with doing the shelving units now. So I'm going to start pocket holing the shelving units. Now, for those of you who haven't seen me work with a pocket hole before, and perhaps you've been wondering about or thinking of getting one of these yourself, I'd definitely recommend it. I've used this for loads of jobs. I'm just going to use the A hole right now. Just use that one, and of course what it does, if you're not familiar, is it's a jig basically for holding that drill bit in just the right spot. I've set the collar to the right depth, and that's ready to go, and it's going to put a nice tight angled hole, so I can basically, you know, toe screw into the bottom of the shelf. So we line that up with that A there, that mark. It only has to be rough, it doesn't have to be perfect. Clamp that down like that. Bring this in, and off we go. And there's your pocket hole right there. And as you can see, that's a nice and discreet hole, and we'll put a short screw in there like that, and I'll put some glue in as well, but that'll be hidden from sight. All right. And there's your pocket holes right there. Okay, excellent. Oh, while I've got the pocket hole out, let's uh-oh, I forgot to do this up front, so that's all right, I can do it. I should have done this first actually, but never mind. Let's get that over a little more. Should be ever so quick. Okay. Got to pay attention. I nearly put that in the wrong hole. I would have had to have remade that. All right, okay, so there we go. Right, so that's all the pocket holing, I think, and that will allow us to mount this guy somewhere about with those pocket holes. I should be able to mount that probably about there. And again, I've got to be near the middle. I don't want to be too close or it's going to bind up on the back here. So actually I might bring that forward a little, about 2/3 forward. And but before I screw that and glue it, I'm going to sand this back down, so I mustn't forget to do that. So just for a minute, I'm going to find the right length of pocket hole screws and get this glued and screwed on. These are actually proper Craig screws. They work very well in these holes. These use the number 2 square drive, and it's a pan head screw, so it should get a nice grip inside the hole. In fact, I'm going to pre-drill. Let's pre-drill, because this being oak, that would be a good idea. So I'm using the helps if the drill is actually going in the correct direction. I'm going to catch one of those with a screw bit. Let's get my number 2 square drive in there, and let's just pinch that up and dry fit it, just to be sure that that's not going to come through the. No, it's not. It's not coming through the wood. So I've got one in the end here, and now I'm just lining up the back with my finger and making sure that it's not. And I'm just using that hole as a guide to make a starter hole like that for the screw. Again, I'm just going to line it up. I'm using it as a sort of a bradawl, really. I don't want too much of my drill bit hitting that top there. Not that I'm going to be doing anything to hide these, but if I was, that would be important. Alright, I think we're ready. I'm gonna stain this now. I'm gonna stain all the parts. I'm gonna sand this, I'm gonna stain that, and then we'll let the stain dry, and then I'll assemble this and mount it on the wall. We'll glue it and mount it after we've stained it. I think it'll be easier to stain in parts. So let's take that one off the end here. We'll get this stained, and then we'll get started with the assembly.
I did decide to give it a sanding before the assembly and before staining, just to make sure that we'd got a nice smooth finish on there. So I used a power sander, and then I finished off with some hand sanding as well.
Time to do some staining now. I've just been blasting the surfaces of these bits of wood with this thing, because this lifts out all the micro bits of dust that are a result of all the sanding I did. And I found that to be an extremely helpful technique in getting the wood ready. You know, you can literally see the grain kind of getting more contrasty as you blow away all the little micro bits of. Just try and show you that, because that was working really well. You can see how this is. You can't see the grain quite so well here, and then when I hit it with this, all these light coloured bits will come out of there, and it'll have a higher contrast. Watch this. Now, I've never seen a blower used for that before, so it's remarkable. I mean, it's just another one of those sort of hacks in the workshop. You know, ways of using tools that they weren't probably originally designed for, but it does a really good job. And you could see those dark bits of grain just sort of jumping out as the air was lifting them out. All right, we're ready for stain. Here's my standard operating procedure for a stain. Use these. I bought these ages ago. I've been using these years actually. It's a big box of extra large latex gloves, and they save you getting covered in all this stuff. Here's my chosen stain, and it's also worth investing in a bag of these little terry cloths. Are perfect. These are. I got these online, Amazon, I think, and they're perfect for staining. I like to rub on and then rub off the excess. Let's start with something small to start with. You do our little guy here. Now this is what's called a provincial stain color, and this one has done very well at being a close match to our kitchen cabinets and stuff. So right, so we put on that. Now we need a taking off cloth. So, and this is just to get it to even out. All right. Make sure that top looks good. And so, all right. I think by the time we've got some rubbed on poly on there, that's going to be in good shape. So again, I think we've got ourselves a finish there. So I'll be back in 24 hours or so. Right, that has had like 24 hours and that still feels slightly greasy to me, which means it's probably not fully dried. But I think I'll glue it. Okay, so let's put these in the pocket holes, and I did a good job yesterday lining these up. That should come up nice and tight like that, and I'm actually stitching these from this end. When I say stitching, I'm going to do that one, leaving me some leverage to bend the next one into the right position. Alright, but I'll make sure that I'm bending using the leverage of the length to make sure that it doesn't. Yeah, that's perfect. Let's get this thing installed then. So I'm gonna decide on the height and just mark that. I think that's about where I want it. Yep, looks good. It should be good. All right, let's screw in at the far end there. Good. Get the bubble on it. There we go. Okay. Let's get that lined up. That is level like that. Let's wind in my bullseye. Well, I'm hitting those studs, so the little metal detector trick seems to have worked very well. Let's try the last screw here. Bullseye again. Okay. Excellent. That'll do nicely. But there is the finished ensemble with kitchen roll discreetly tucked in underneath, so we can now put a few things on the shelf that would otherwise be in the way on the counter here. So that gives us a little bit more space for some small things and some small storage. So there you go.
Please click the like button if you found this episode helpful, and we'd love to have you as a subscriber, as there's always something interesting going on in the Smoogleville workshop.